They haven't even officially touched the field for spring football or fall football or a game, but Max Brosmer is already impressing.
Hey, you are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. And today we're kicking it off with some Gophers football talk. Now, tomorrow we will talk about the men's basketball tournament, the Big Ten tournament coming up, where the Gophers landed in that, what the path looks like for the Gophers, and so much more. And we'll talk about how the women's basketball team concluded their Big Ten tournament run. But first, today we are talking all football because spring football will be here before you know it. And we have a lot of quarterback talk here on today's show. We're going to talk about what Max Brosmer is doing already in the offseason that impresses me. And then we're going to talk about what his style of play looks like compared to the quarterbacks we've seen here in Minnesota with Coach Fleck. And finally, why this room is still not decided, not fully settled quite yet, and what to expect or keep an eye out for as we get towards the back half of this spring session. So that's today's show. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Hopefully you are ready to talk some football because it's going to be back before you know it. But it is officially the offseason. We'll have March Madness. We'll have the Big Ten tournament and all that. And then the sports start to slow down quite a bit, but we are not slowing down here at Locked On Golden Gophers. We're going to talk about football. We're going to talk about the basketball changes and so much more. So be sure to hit subscribe. Be sure to follow along, hit like so others can find the video as well, and we can keep building up this Gophers community. Now, let's talk about what Max Brosmer is doing in this offseason that already has me impressed, because it's not even with a football in his hand, but what he is doing to take it to the next step, to be prepared and to get his teammates and himself right for this upcoming season. And that is putting in the work in the off periods. Now, you have a time where it's winter sessions, workout sessions and whatnot, starting in January with the football team, where they get their winter workouts and things of that sort, working with the strength and conditioning programs and whatnot. But the coaches don't get a lot of contact with the players. Maybe here and there, they are suited a little bits of time here and there. But outside of that, it's kind of a dead zone between coaches and players. But then from there, you have spring football, which comes up, and that's where you get your official practices. That's where you get to go and grind it out and get your spring football game and so much more. But between that, you have like a week or two of dead period where the guys get to go vacation, go back home, finish up some winter classes if they need to take some between, what have you. They get a couple of weeks to themselves to be away from football, to do things on their own, but to really refresh before you hit that spring football period. And what Max Brosmer has done, taken the initiative of doing in that period, is getting some guys together, bringing them to Georgia, not only to get some work in, but to build on that chemistry. Brosmer is out there putting in the extra work with his new teammates. Prior to the spring session getting underway, the players had an opportunity to return home, vacation, like I said, in between winter workouts in that spring session. And Brosmer, who is from Georgia, was putting in work with Elijah Spencer, Lemeki Brockington, Kenrick Lanier, also from Georgia, and his other quarterbacks, Drake Lindsay and Max Shikenjansky. So overall, that is great to see. It's tremendous to see. That is exactly what you should want to see if you are a Gophers diehard football fan, because you're sitting there building chemistry with 3 of the 4 potential starting wide receivers in that room, getting clicked with them, together with them. But then also, this quarterback room is young. It's unfinished right now. And he is the elder statesman in that room by a long stretch. You have a walk-on redshirt freshman and a true freshman in that room with you. And he's like, let's get some work in. Let me teach you my ways. Let me teach you what it takes to play at this collegiate level. Let's teach you how to get through it all. Not only from his perspective, but also from his quarterback coach perspective. And his quarterback coach isn't just anyone. It isn't just some Joe Schmo. It isn't just a guy he met in high school or anything like that. No, his quarterback's coach is Quincy Avery, really well known in the space, who has worked with CJ Stroud, Jalen Hurts, Deshaun Watson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and many, many others that have played at that collegiate and NFL level. So being able to work firsthand with them, getting his young guys in with them, and then getting the connection with the wide receivers, building the trust, building the chemistry, building the way that they really run their routes and finding the fine tuning, that is critical. That is the difference between maybe a late game loss and a late game win, is building that extra time, that extra reps, and that extra chemistry right now in between the spring session and the winter workouts. So I am very impressed. I love to see it, and you should be as well. Now, it's also that extra work and that unseen work that will take this team much further in 2024. And that is exactly what is needed to get back from an under year, a 5-7 regular season year, a down year. How you bounce back from something like that is exactly the way that Max Brosmer and crew are going about their business and putting in the extra time, putting in the extra work, and working with someone who is an expert. Now, this is also great for the long-term future of this program because Drake Lindsay is learning firsthand from a quarterback who has experience not only playing at an elite level in college, but also knows what it takes to work at that collegiate level, knows how to watch film at that collegiate level. And then also he gets to work early with a guy like Quincy Avery, who knows what it takes to get a guy to the pros, and maybe even open up an opportunity for Quincy Avery to work with Drake Lindsay in the future, which could be awesome. Maybe those two connect. Maybe they keep on working beyond this season. Maybe he can become a new pupil of Quincy Avery's, which would be awesome for Drake Lindsay and the Gophers because it benefits them in the long term. But also, Drake Lindsay's goal is to get to the NFL. He wants to play at that next level, and it would be wonderful because he has the size already. He has the arm talent, the rocket arm, a bazooka attached to his shoulder. He's got all that. And now it's getting up to game speed, and it's getting into the finer details and getting into the mechanics. That way it can help him elevate and get further and better even faster. So overall, love everything I'm seeing on that department. Great leadership from Max Brosmer. I saw somebody ask, okay, I see Kendrick Lanier's out there. I see Lemecki Brockington. I see Elijah Spencer. Like, those guys are probably going to see good reps with the Gophers this year, but is there any concern with Daniel Jackson not being out there? I would not read into it like that whatsoever. Again, this is the down period time. So maybe he already had plans before the opportunity came up. Maybe he already had something booked with family or something like that. I would not look into it beyond that. I think Daniel Jackson has shown he's committed to the program and he is ready to rock out for his final season. So no worries on that front. So overall, I love the leadership. I love the initiative. I love the extra work that is going in. And it just shows you how much promise there could be with Max Brosmer as QB1 at the helm. But speaking of QBs, I want to talk about Max Brosmer and his playing style. What is he going to bring to Dinkytown in his one and only season with the Golden Gophers? That's what we're going to dive into coming up next. First, let's talk to you about a new friend of the show, Fire TV, because Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs as well as a Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies, TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have Fire TV. And Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes us here at the Locked On Podcast Network and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep you up to date on the latest world of sports. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and so much more. You're definitely going to want to give it a try, especially when it's free, because you always know I say if it's free, it's me. So check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Ask Alexa devices. And if you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this one. You won't regret it. To learn more, visit amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. All right, and while we're at it, let's talk about our friends over at Gametime. Now, you know it's the place to be when it comes to ticketing apps because you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying your tickets and for your next big event, whether it's a comedy show, a concert, a sports game, a basketball game, MLB, you name it. They've got you covered, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and so much more. They take the guesswork out of ticket buying, and you're definitely going to want to give it a try. So download the Gametime app because they are obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Gametime has deals right up until the start of the event and even 1 hour after the event starts. It's the place to find last-minute deals. On top of that, they have exclusive flash deals, sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. And with zone deals, all the deals, you can pick the section, and Gametime picks the seats for the big time savings. So Gametime also has a Gametime guarantee, which means you'll get the best price. And if you find tickets in that same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% the difference. So take the guesswork out of ticket buying and download Gametime today. Create an account and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's Locked On, LOCKEDON, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Gophers fans, let's talk about Max Brosmer and his style of play, because we have seen a vast amount of QB play from the Minnesota Golden Gophers in PJ Flex time here. Now, we haven't seen a ton of starting QBs, but we've seen the whole spectrum, the whole gamut of quarterback play and the style from our quarterbacks in those 6-7 years. So we've seen Tanner Morgan on one side of the spectrum, a more cerebral quarterback who made his success on getting through his reads and quickly and usually using precision. And his greatest success came from anticipatory throws, where he was basically throwing guys open, throwing to the spots they're going to be at, and being able to hit them in stride for them to create after the play. Now, his struggles started to come when there was pressure, when the pocket was collapsing, and when he had to try to make something out of nothing. That is when Tanner Morgan tended to have some issues on the field. Then we saw Ethan Kaliakmanis, who had the arm talent. He had the off-schedule throws. He had the different angles. He had all the talent in his pinky finger and then some. But he found more of his success in the making something out of nothing, or the broken plays. But when he had to get through multiple field reads and quickly, and he had to get through his progressions fast, and he had to read the defense in certain ways, anticipatory throws and all that, just the jazz, that is what wasn't his strong suit. That is where we started to see maybe a little bit of the, not panic, but just the off timing, where the layups weren't completed. So it was quite the difference. It was quite the spectrum between those two quarterbacks. And those are the two quarterbacks that have started games for Coach Fleck at the Gophers. Quite literally, we saw the extreme opposites at the quarterback position. But along the way, we saw one other quarterback get some starts, and that is Zach Annexstad in 2018. Now, if you're looking at the play styles comparatively, I think he leans more to the Ethan Kaliakmanis side of the spectrum quite a bit. And so he, again, relied a bit more on his legs, a bit more on his talent and his arm talent and whatnot, as opposed to getting through the field reads and getting the timing of the system down. Now, what are we going to see from Max Brosmer? That's the question. What are we going to see from the upcoming QB1 in a year where the Gophers have to bounce back? Max Brosmer, it looks a lot different in my opinion. If I had to speak of styles of play, it would probably be closer to the Tanner Morgan side of the spectrum, but possibly even more anticipation than what we saw from Tanner Morgan, which is an NFL quality. And on top of that, adding in elements of the off schedule and the broken playmaking. So finding somewhere in the more middle ground of the two quarterbacks, or the two play styles, I should say, but leaning more towards the Tanner Morgan play style. But he still has that ability, and that's big. Now, if you want me to speak it into NFL terms, into terms that make more sense for me, I don't fully get that. Put some names to it, put some faces to it. So if Tanner Morgan is the Kirk Cousins or the Eli Manning of quarterback styles, very much here's my reads, here, get through my progressions, I'm not really going to create too much. Now, I know Kirk had some moments. I know Kirk might be a sensitive subject right now for Minnesota Vikings fans, but he got his money, so let him go. But anyways, if being in the pocket, getting through your reads quickly, throwing with anticipation and all that, but not really having the mobility, not having the extra extended plays, is your play style. That was more where we're falling into Tanner Morgan. So Tanner Morgan more in that Kirk Cousins, Eli Manning type frame. And then we move over to Ethan Kaliakmanis, who is more of that Zach Wilson, Johnny Manziel type frame, where it's like the play style where they want to create, they want to continue to get outside of the pocket, look downfield, play a little backyard football, a schoolyard football. That is what we see from more of an Ethan Kaliakmanis. The leaning into your talent and your gifts as opposed to the system and the play calling and the timing of things. Those were the two kind of spectrums. So Tanner Morgan, Kirk Cousins, Eli Manning. Ethan Kaliakmanis, Johnny Manziel, Zach Wilson type. So what would I say Max Brosmer is going to fall into? I would say Max Brosmer brings more of a CJ Stroud type of game to the table, more of a Joe Burrow type of game to the table. And again, we are stressing style of play. Now, I'm not saying he's going to turn into CJ Stroud. I'm not saying he's going to turn into Joe Burrow. But what I'm saying is that he has the ability to be in the pocket and make the reads and make the calls at the line, be able to make adjustments and see things open and have that Tanner Morgan, Kirk Cousins, Eli Manning skill set, but also be able to get outside of the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, create on the run, create on the outside, keep the play alive, but not enough where he's leaning into, I can make a bad throw because I have the arm. I can make a risky play because I have the talent. No, he'll lean into it, but it's a calculated risk in extending the plays. That's the type of play style I see from Max Brosmer. More of a CJ Stroud, more of a Joe Burrow. Both of those guys being from Ohio State, which was Max Brosmer's favorite school growing up as a kid through the game of football. So it doesn't surprise me that maybe some of those players, even though they're not extremely separated in age, having similarities in the play style, also knowing he works with the same QB coach as CJ Stroud, it makes sense. And his quarterback coach, Quincy Avery, has talked nothing but praises for Max Brosmer's game, and he believes he can get to the NFL. He believes he has the talent, and he can hang with a lot of those guys I listed in segment 1. He has the talent to do so, and I'm hoping we get to see it here with the Golden Gophers in Dinkytown. Now, in essence, hopefully he brings a bit more of the best of both worlds here in Dinkytown. I'm excited to see what it looks like in this sole season, but also how his leadership, which he's already showing, is great off the field, how it plays into some of those younger guys and helps them attain their ceilings and helps them get to their best football beyond Max Brosmer. So that is going to be a fun thing to keep an eye on here in 2024. But the final thing we're going to talk about is this quarterback room is not done yet. It's not finished. It's not a full room, and I'm going to tell you why and what to be on the lookout for as spring concludes here in the April sessions. What type of programs to be on the lookout for as players start to hit the portal. That's what we're going to talk about to close up today's show coming up next. First, let's talk about our friends with LinkedIn Jobs, because when you're hiring for a small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for your role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn Jobs is not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to be. And it gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easier and more intuitive. Now, hiring when you have that many qualified candidates, quality candidates, is so easy. In fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So definitely be on LinkedIn Jobs. It is the place to be. I would not suggest any other place, because LinkedIn Jobs has you covered. They also know that small businesses are wearing so many different hats and they might not have the time or the resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier, and they hear your opinions. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses are using LinkedIn for hiring, so don't fall behind. Definitely post about your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post about your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Gophers fans, we are wrapping this one up, talking about the quarterback room and why it is not a finished product quite yet, because the Gophers will add a quarterback, at least one, in the portal come April. Now, who are the names to possibly keep an eye on? It's hard to say because we haven't yet seen everybody who has hit the portal, but overall concepts to keep an eye on, that's what we can dive into. Now, I would not imagine that Minnesota adds anyone that is currently sitting in the portal, still doesn't have a team. Otherwise, you'd add them now. You would get them involved. You would get them involved in the spring, have them go for the spring practices and be ahead of the curve. But that hasn't happened. So why would you add them after when you could have added them earlier? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So you can start to cross guys like Jaden DeLora, Gunnar Gundy, and others that are currently sitting in the portal off the list. I don't think they're going to be on Minnesota's radar whatsoever. But there's other things you can probably take off the list, in my opinion. You're looking for someone who hits the portal probably from a Power 5 school at this point. You don't really take a guy from the G5 or the FCS because they don't bring the experience or the upside that you would want for the program in the long term. Now, you know Max Brosmer is going to be your starting QB1. So you're not going to take a guy that has 1 year left or doesn't really have much eligibility beyond this year, because it's not going to do you much good. You're really only going to have them in the room in case of an injury, and that doesn't feel productive, especially when they would be learning the system and be a step behind the 8 ball as well. So overall, you definitely grab a player who is more experienced, who has a couple years of eligibility left, maybe 2 to 3 years left, probably more in that 2. And you hope that that player not only can push in a battle next year if needed, but they can be that steady presence if something were to happen this season. You see those players from the lower levels, the FCS, the G5, you see those guys committing to bigger Power 5 programs more so after the season in that December window. That is when the best time is for that. That's where you start to make that shift. But coming into the April sessions, coming into the fall sessions, you're not going to see a whole lot of that, and definitely not at the quarterback position. So a lot of those guys, again, you can cross them off the list. So what you should keep an eye on for when it comes to the Gophers and looking at this transfer portal window in April and how they're going to look for a quarterback, I would start to keep an eye on, maybe keep an ear on Twitter. I don't know what the phrase is, but you get where I'm going with this. On transfers from a Power 5 level, of course, we've kind of already made that stamp with the last couple statements, but transfers from a Big Ten school. I think guys who have played in the conference and have experience in the conference, that could be a big thing. Or on top of that, transfers that are sophomores and juniors with enough experience that they could step in case of an injury, but also enough eligibility left to compete for the next year or to try and compete and win the job from a Drake Lindsay or a Max Chiganjansky. So overall, sophomores, juniors that are coming from a P5, maybe hopefully even the Big Ten, that's where red flags, alarms, foghorns, whatever goes off in your brain. When you see that type of quarterback hit the portal, you should expect the Gophers to be very active and very aggressive in this April session. Now, players that the Gophers have recruited prior, that is another thing to keep an eye on, because the Gophers will have some chemistry there between the staff and the player, and maybe that will be the factor that gets them to want to commit over this way. So if they've had some experience and been recruited by the staff before, that will be helpful. If they're a sophomore or junior, if they're coming from a Power 5 level of play, particularly the Big Ten, but it doesn't have to be the Big Ten. If you start to see those factors add up and you see a quarterback like that hit the transfer portal and they clearly weren't going to start somewhere else, maybe that's where they take a look here, because they see, look, yeah, I might not be able to start at Minnesota this year like I couldn't start at the other school I just transferred out of, but that job is for the taking come next year, and I have 2 to 3 years of eligibility left. I can battle my tail off. I can prove now, and if anything happens, I'm ready to step up now and continue to win the job. That is what you are going to see Minnesota try and attack in the transfer portal. I'm more than sure of it. And players that have that recruiting chemistry with the coaching staff definitely helps, or players who play from a similar system, who have experience with the RPO, with the pro style, and can read coverages, not single read quarterbacks that it's like, here, read this, otherwise get outside the pocket and create. Players that can get through multiple progressions or have been in systems that work that, that can get under center, that can work in the RPO game. Players in those type of systems will pique the interest of the Gophers more than anybody outside of that. So I think that's what you need to keep in mind as we get towards these spring sessions. But with only a true freshman, a redshirt freshman that's a walk-on, and Max Brosmer with 1 year of eligibility left in this quarterback room, you better believe Minnesota is going to take an aggressive approach in that transfer portal, and I would keep your eyes peeled. Now, if you're like, I don't have the time to look into things like that, I just want to know who are guys that could be possibilities, be sure to hit subscribe on this podcast because we will cover it along the way. As we see those names hit the portal, we'll bring them up on the show and so much more. So if you want that update, if you want update on recruiting, which we will get to here in the spring, if you want more Gophers talk on the daily, be sure to hit subscribe. I will see you tomorrow where we're going to talk about not only the women's basketball tournament and how that wrapped up for the Gophers, but we're going to prep for the men's Big Ten tournament, which is this week, where the Gophers take on Michigan State in their first matchup. We're going to talk about what that could look like in that matchup and beyond on this week's episode tomorrow. So I will see you then. Row the boat, Sky Gophers as always, and also do not forget to hit subscribe.